Okay, greetings all. Welcome to week 2. This week we'll try something a little bit different. We're going to do everything remotely. Got a number of videos here for you. This is the first. We've also got an applied exercise for you using linear layout and an XML tutorial. So you'll have plenty to do this week. This week's topic, we're going to introduce the Android user interface in a little bit more detail. We touched on it last week. You wrote the Hello World program just to get your first taste. We're going to continue with those ideas, and we're going to talk about some of the specific components that are used, or the so-called widgets that are used in the Android user interface toolkit. So let's just get right to it. Here's our agenda. We'll do kind of an overview of the Android user interface. We'll continue there, and we'll start talking about XML, Extensible Markup Language, and this idea of laying out components by specifying components in XML in one of these XML layout files. Again, you got a little taste of that in last week's Hello World exercise. We'll continue with that today. You'll create and edit a more extensive XML layout file. Not too bad, but a bit more. And again, as we mentioned last week, no one needs to be an expert in XML, but you will edit XML files. You'll create XML files, and you'll always have plenty of examples. What do we do in these XML files? We lay out user interface elements. Now, the Android user interface toolkit is fully featured. There's a lot in there. We won't cover every component. We'd be here for quite some time. We're going to look at some of the common components, some of the bread and butter components. We'll look at text components, simple but enormously useful. We'll look at buttons. We'll look at a type of buttons called a radio button. We'll look at spinners, a couple others. Even if you have no experience as a developer using these components, you are all expert users of these components. So the good news is you already know, better than most college students, better than most, you already know how to use these components. We'll look at how to, now in this class, we're going to look at how to invoke them programmatically and respond to user interface events via these components. Moving on, we're going to talk about linear layout. We lay out components in these XML layout files. A linear layout is a kind of a layout, as the name implies, and we lay out components either vertically, one on top of the other, or horizontally, side by side. And your applied exercise and your homework this week is to build, edit, and use a linear layout. And then we'll summarize. So let's just get right in. We'll talk about the Android user interface in XML. So Android provides, as we've said a few times now, Android provides the capability to declare user interface elements in XML. Now, people always ask, can this be done programmatically? It can. The style, if you will, is to do it in XML, at least the initial layouts, and it's pretty widely used. Android is not the only UI toolkit that takes this approach. This approach is popular with most UI toolkits. So elements and layouts appear in an extensible markup language file, such as, and this name, I've got it here as main.xml. This name can be whatever you specify. And in Eclipse, it'll be auto-named, and you should probably take that take that default naming until you get a little bit more familiar with it. The layout file is located in the Eclipse project, and we'll show this in just a moment. But recall, on the left side, you've got a directory structure for your Eclipse project. Under the RES folder, or the resources folder, there's a subfolder called Layout. This is the folder where all of your layout files are going to appear. There's other kinds of resources that we'll get into. There's strings, and there's images, and there's drawables. This week, we're just looking at layouts. For more information, here is from your online textbook, and I won't click this right now, but here, if you like, here is more information that dives deeper into this discussion of laying out elements using extensible markup language. Okay, here is an Eclipse project. So here, and as you can see in this left-hand pane here, there's a number. This is called the Package Explorer, and you see here in Eclipse there's a number of different projects. When you first start with a fresh install, you won't have any in here. You'll select an Eclipse workspace, and you'll have a number of projects in this Eclipse workspace. Maybe your workspace is going to be, whoops, sorry about that. Maybe your workspace is going to be IS413, you'll name it that, and you'll have all your homework projects in there. Notice here, under Resources, we have some drawables. This is where all your images and your artwork and things are going to be. Your actual XML layout files are going to be here in this layout folder. So here we've got a layout file called activity_lin_layout.xml, and here is that file. So let's take a quick look at it, and this is pretty similar to what you're going to be creating. This is pretty similar to what you're going to be creating in class this week. You see here at the top of the file, it indicates that it's a linear layout. And what you've got here, and we'll talk about this, here you've got, well, let's start with the top. Here you've got a linear layout with an orientation of vertical. Notice here you've got a width and a height of fill parent. Hold that thought, we'll get to that in a minute. Notice here we've got layouts nested within layouts. So here we actually have two, oops, sorry about that, we have two linear layouts nested inside sort of the main parent linear layout. And what are we actually laying out? We're laying out these text view components. It's okay if you don't quite see all this just yet. This is the idea of this week's homework, and we'll talk more about linear layouts in just a couple minutes. But here's sort of the view. This is, sort of the big picture view, and this is some of the work we're going to be doing this week. Okay, so in this resources directory, you've got a number of different kinds of files. There's layout files, and in the project you just saw, noticed here in the project you just saw, that was linlayout.xml. That's your layout file. Here I've called it main.xml. Again, this will default to whatever your project is called. You can also change the name if you like. This file contains layouts and user interface elements. It's located in resources/layout. There's also other kinds of resources. Here is a file called strings.xml, and not surprisingly, it contains string resources. This file is located in the directory res/values. And there's a number of these. We're certainly not covering all of them. Here's one. When we get a little bit later in the course, we'll talk about defining arrays in Android. You can actually initialize the contents of an array with an array.xml file. So it'll contain XML definitions of arrays. It's also located in this resources/values subdirectory. If present, it's optional. You need not use it. So that's kind of where we're going. So we'll continue, and just to sort of summarize this first little section, so we're going to lay out our components in one of these resources/layout files, and in this XML file will contain layouts and UI elements. What are some of those UI elements? We'll look at that in just a moment in our next video, so see you in a minute.